United States. I've talked to all these people, and I'm glad many people have talked to me. And I'm glad of the privilege of having a chance to meet you face to face.
Hello everybody, I'm Steve Grove from our Google team here in Mountain View, California, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the first ever presidential hangout road trip with President Obama. Mr. President, we're going to be taking you on a virtual whistle-stop tour today across the country, hopping into 3 different Google Plus Hangouts with groups of Americans who have questions for you. And I should tell our viewers at home that neither you nor any of the members of your staff know which questions are going to be asked today. Our team here at Google chose these participants from amongst thousands of questions that were submitted online. Mr. President, it's become a great annual tradition for you to speak to your fellow Americans on Google Plus and YouTube after your State of the Union speech. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us.
Well, it's great to see you, Steve. Thank you so much for helping to set this up.
Well, we're excited. Let's get right to it. We're actually going to start in the western part of the country today as we begin our journey across America. And here in the West, we're joined by Art Hernandez, a data tech in Tempe, Arizona, Steve Hamilton, a documentary film producer in Santa Clara, California, and Sheila Chung Hagan, who works for the Public Utilities Commission of San Francisco. Sheila, let's start with you.
Happy New Year, Mr. President.
Thank you so much.
You've called 2014 a year of action where you'll work with Congress when it's possible, and you'll use your executive authority when Congress fails to take action. You've asked Congress to pass a comprehensive immigration reform with a clear path to citizenship, and yet legislators continue at an impasse. You have used your executive authority in the past to help the Dreamers, young people who were brought to this country as children. And so I'm wondering, will you now use your executive authority to halt deportations, which have been ripping families apart, until Congress passes a comprehensive immigration reform?
Well, Sheila, it's great to talk to you, and thanks for the question. I think this is one area where I am modestly optimistic about Congress acting this year. And part of that optimism is that it's so obviously the right thing to do. Comprehensive immigration reform has gained support from all walks of American life. You have law enforcement, you have clergy member, including evangelicals that are traditionally strong supporters of the Republican Party.
Dude, she asked you if you were going to stop deporting the people.
But you also have businesses who recognize that this would be terrifically important for economic growth, short-term and long-term, would actually cut our deficits by $1 trillion.
So any other president,
the arguments are compelling. We saw a bipartisan bill pass through the Senate last year, and Speaker Boehner announced a couple of, actually yesterday, that he has principles for immigration reform that are moving in the direction of the principles that I had laid out from the time that I first ran for this office. There are still some differences, and obviously the devil is in the details. But it is my firm belief that we can get immigration reform done this year. And I don't want to presuppose that we can't. Obviously, if at some point we see that it's not getting done, I'm going to look at all options to make sure that we have a rational, smart system of immigration. But I'm going to do everything I can in these coming months to see if we can get this over the finish line, and I think we actually can get it done. One last point I want to make.
There's that sports analogy. Over the finish line. We're all a team.
In any scenario, we're going to have stronger border security. In any scenario, we're going to improve the legal immigration system so that families can be unified faster, that you don't have this massive bureaucracy, these backlogs, where folks may wait for decades to be reunited. In any scenario, we're going to be making sure that employers aren't taking advantage of undocumented workers, and that we can enforce that. I believe in any scenario we should also make sure that at the end of the day, people are able to become citizens, because we don't want a situation in which...
Can you cut the guy off? I mean, I don't care if he's blathering.
People in this country. folks who are full-fledged citizens and folks who are not. This is something where there's going to be some differences between the Senate approach, which does have a clear path to citizenship, and what we've seen so far
and then blame it on
out of the House Republicans. But the point I made yesterday is that I want to engage. I don't want to prejudge and presuppose that we can't close some of those gaps. I'm going to keep on fighting as hard as I can and remain, as I said, modestly optimistic. You can never be completely optimistic when you're talking about Washington because we have some history of stuff not getting done in this town as opposed to getting done. But I'm going to be pushing very hard in the next few months to see if we can get this over the finish line.
Well, let's go to Steve in Santa Clara next, Mr. President.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I want to say it's an honor to speak with you, sir. Thank you for taking the time to do this.
Bootlicker?
My question to you is, last year I filmed a documentary about Chernobyl in Ukraine, and while I was there, I made a lot of really good friends. And right now, those friends are living under what could be considered Soviet-type rules with freedoms and such. Not like a free democracy like they're supposed to be. What's our country's stance on these protests that are going on there, the Euromaidan protests, and what does the administration plan to do to assist the protesters in Kiev?
Well, we have been actively engaged in what's been happening in the Ukraine. Not only has our embassy and our folks who are over there been talking to the opposition as well as the government, but folks like Vice President Biden have spoken directly to President Yanukovych
this guy knows
about
absolutely
our
nothing.
belief that, number one,
I could make this
rules
stuff
that restrict
up. He's making this up
protests
as he
and free
goes
speech
along.
Are
every time
ultimately
he goes
counterproductive, and
he's just
we
winging
are
this.
Very much against. Number two, that there has to be a way
that gives him time
restructure
to make up another
the
lie
Ukrainian
quick.
government in a way that allows the voices of the opposition and those folks on the streets to be heard.
Telltale sign right there.
In preparation for some sort of democratic process that creates a government with greater legitimacy and unity. And that's going to be challenging, but we're trying to help on the negotiations on that. Number three, over the long term, part of what's happened here is that the people of Ukraine clearly are looking to Europe and the West as a partner in a
questions obviously
more
here are controlled. The first one was a good question.
More free market-based economy.
This one was a setup.
Obviously, they also have strong historic ties to Russia, as well as a lot of commercial relationships with Russia, and those don't need to be sacrificed. But what I think the people of Ukraine do not want to see, and this is evidenced by what's happened on the streets, is a situation where behind closed doors, their aspirations for a more free society and one that's integrated with Europe more closely, that's foreclosed. And I think this is just one more example of what we've seen around the world. It's very hard for countries to engage in an old-style politics that doesn't take into account the genuine hopes and aspirations of ordinary people, because with the internet and smartphones and Google and technology and information, people want to be part of determining their own destiny.
Now, what does a smartphone have to do with the destiny of mankind?
Hopefully, those in power in Ukraine are going to recognize that, and we can get this resolved peacefully.
Buying this?
Always worried about the violence, but as I said, we're engaging on a daily basis with the Ukrainian government to make sure that we get a positive outcome there.
Yeah, well, let's go to Art in Tempe.
Hi, Mr. President. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I really appreciate it. I have two daughters who currently live on the East Coast, and as you might expect, I can't afford to visit them as frequently as I'd like to. So the only opportunity that we get to spend time together is through the internet on video chats, such as this one. My question today has to do with net neutrality and the recent U.S. Court of Appeals ruling
That's Bob Marley on the
almost
wall
disregarding
right
the
there,
rules
ain't
of a fair and neutral internet. I'm curious to know if you support net neutrality and how you feel about the court's decision and how that decision will impact the U.S. economy and the internet as we currently know it.
Well, first of all, let me just say that's a nice Marley poster you got behind you.
Thank you.
I think I might have had that one in high school. It's something that I've cared deeply about ever since I ran for office.
The Marley
in part because my own campaign was empowered by a free and open internet, and the ability for citizens all across this country to engage and create and find new ways and new tools to mobilize themselves. A lot of that couldn't have been done if there were a bunch of commercial barriers and roadblocks. And so I've been a strong supporter of net neutrality. The new commissioner of the FCC, Tom Wheeler, who I appointed, I know is a strong supporter of net neutrality. We live under a system in which when a court rules, we have to respect that ruling initially, but the FCC, I know, and Tom Wheeler are looking at all the options at their disposal, potential appeals,
He's a lying piece
rulemaking,
he's so happy
a variety
that
of tools
ain't even funny.
they may have in order to continue to vindicate the notion of a free and open internet. And I think you can feel confident that this administration will continue to support that. There are going to be a lot of technical issues about how best we can get to that. And I know that they're still evaluating the court opinion. The one good piece of news coming out of this court opinion was the court did confirm that the FCC can regulate this space. They have authority. And the question now is, how do they use that authority? If the old systems and rulings that they had in place were not effective in preserving net neutrality, do they have other tools that would stand up to court scrutiny that accomplishes the same goals? And you can expect
they're going to lock the internet down.
Even though the FCC is independent, once I make the appointment, I can't meddle in the decision making based on my conversations with Tom Wheeler before he was appointed. I'm pretty confident, and they've said already that they're going to be exploring how they can continue to uphold what makes the internet so special.
Yeah, that
Mr. President, we're going to say goodbye to our friends here in the West. Goodbye, everybody.
See you guys.
Bye, Mr. President.
It was great to talk to you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And we're gonna move on to the next section of our road trip today. It's in the middle of the country, and you'll see as we hop into the hangout that we're in the central part of the United States. I should tell you that here in the heartland, most of the country, the number one most searched issue on Google is the economy, and that outpaces searches for all of the issues. So we're actually really going to put a focus on the economy for this part of our conversation. And to help us do that, we are joined today by Curtis Angel, a student at Southwestern Christian University who lives in Aubrey, Texas.
Hey, Curtis.
Leatrice Fullerton, a social worker in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and finally Darnell Summer, a fry cook at a fast food restaurant in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Let's start with you, Darnell.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. My name is Darnell Summers. I'm 57 years old, and I work in the fast food industry. I have been on strike 4 times. I'm only making $7.25 an hour. I've been on strike 4 times in association with Wisconsin's Jobs Now to try to get an increase in wages and a fast food union with no prevail. My question to you is, what can you and Congress do to help people as myself in this situation survive? Because with $7.25 and we were broken down to part-time to avoid paying health insurance, we can't survive. It's not living.
Well, Darnell, I agree with you. And on Tuesday at my State of the Union, I talked about this. We've got to make sure that the economy is growing and creating jobs. We've got to make sure folks have the skills to get those jobs. but we also got to make sure that work
What kind of
pays.
skill do you need for a fast food
The
job?
minimum wage in this country has not gone up in a very long time. It's actually worth about 20% less than when Ronald Reagan came into office back in 1980. And
you feel guilty because you bailed out all the bankers,
agree on
don't you?
is that if you work full time in this country, you should not be in poverty when you're raising your families. So,
dude, Obama is
here's what I've done myself through executive action.
Right in your face.
I intend to make sure that anybody who's doing federal business, anybody who's a federal contractor, that their federally funded employees are governed by a minimum wage, $10.10 an hour. Beyond that, I'm working to encourage states, governors, mayors, state legislators to raise their own minimum wage. And since I made this call for a higher minimum wage a year ago, we've seen already 5 states that have increased their minimum wage. A number of cities have moved forward on a living wage initiative of the sort that you're talking about.
Everybody's wage with our money
in your hometown, in your home state.
God.
So I'm going to continue to try to support those coalitions, saying it's the right thing to do. Obviously, the way to reach millions of people would be for Congress to pass a new federal minimum wage law. So far, at least, we have not seen support from Republicans in Congress for such a move. But I'm hoping that as we keep on making the arguments out there, they come to recognize that it's the right thing to do. The day after
low wages in the country
the State Union address, I visited Costco, a company that is hugely profitable, does huge business, is a favorite of the stock market, but their starting salary for entry-level cashier is $11.50 an hour. The fact that they're paying their employees a decent wage and benefits, that's not detracting from their good business practices. In fact, employees, they don't turn over as much because they're getting paid well and being treated well with respect. They're more productive. They're not as stressed. They don't have problems because they can't get their car fixed and get to work on time. And so they, I think, point in the direction of where all businesses need to go. And I'm also talking to companies, encouraging them, do it on your own. Raise wages for your workers. You'll have better workers, more productive workers.
On the way to
You'll
work.
have workers who are loyal to you.
How is making more money going to help you from not being late or missing a day or calling in?
And it'll be good for all businesses, because if folks have a little more money in their pockets, that means they got more money to spend.
Yeah, it means more, you got more money to spend on repairs.
Let's go to Leatrice next in Kalamazoo.
Hello, President Obama.
Hi.
Hi. I just want to give you a little background about myself. I am the third oldest of 6 girls raised by a single mother living in poverty. I was the first in my family to graduate from college, the first of my siblings to graduate from high school. I have a master's degree from Western Michigan University. I'm a parent of 2 beautiful children, and I am blind. Even though I graduated at the top of my class with a master's degree, I was out of work actively looking for employment for 3 years post-graduation before I was offered my first part-time job in the field of social work. My question to you is, what is your plan for inclusion for persons with disabilities in the workforce?
Well, Leatrice, first of all, I couldn't be prouder of you and everything that you've accomplished.
You got a disabled person, which
you're
you can't
welcome.
really.
I know your mom must be really proud of you.
Jump on this woman in any way.
And all your siblings and your children.
This is perfect for him, because
it is absolutely true that folks with disabilities have a higher unemployment rate, and we've got to break down more barriers for them so that they can use all the skills and talents that they've got that somebody like you has, and not have assumptions about what you can and cannot do, preventing you from contributing to your society and supporting your family. The good news is that more and more employers are becoming aware of this. First of all, the federal government, we have really made a big push with all of our agencies to say, what more can we do to actively recruit and employ persons with disabilities? And we have just some tremendous folks in the federal workforce who are doing top-of-the-line work every single day, and we've been steadily able to increase the numbers of persons with disabilities who are employed. But what I'm also doing is working with employers. For example, today, I met with groups of employers who had pledged to do more to hire the long-term unemployed, folks who have typically been unemployed for more than 6 months and 18 months, 24 months. Oftentimes they have trouble getting through the door because the fact that they haven't been employed for a long time means they get screened out and they don't get called back as often. But one of the employers who was there mentioned the enormous work that he's doing, actively recruiting persons with disabilities, and he's got a distribution center as part of this larger corporation where up to 50% of his employees have some sort of disability. And what he said in this meeting was that this distribution center is actually 20% more efficient than any of the other distribution centers that they have. Which just goes to show that if you give people a chance, they'll perform. And the key for us is to make sure that we're getting every single employer out there to, in their hiring practices, in their interviewing practices, in their recruiting practices, that they are being real intentional about what can we do to reach out to more people with disabilities. Obviously, if somebody is flat out discriminated against, they can bring suit.
Or, how about Africa now? How many more people are we going to kill, and who are these people?
You've been discriminated against.
Are we even going to get a list of these people and what they actually did
it's not going to help you right away.
Justify you killing them in our name?
Instead, what we want to do is to convince
I don't know about anybody else, but I'm awful tired of war.
This is good for their business. It's the smart thing to do.
And this is like the farthest thing away from that you can get, isn't it?
Mr. President, we're a little tight for time, so why don't we head on down to Texas and hear from Curtis.
Oh, there is no white people in the Midwest either.
Curtis, good to see you.
Corporations receive tax rebates on the huge CEO bonuses paid each year, but many of their employees receive food stamp subsidies because they don't earn a livable wage. How do we remove the burden placed on the working taxpayers for these subsidies and hold high-profit corporations such as Walmart and McDonald's responsible for the subsidies that their own employees receive and hold them accountable for not paying their workers a livable wage?
Well, Curtis, obviously, one thing we can do right away, as I said, is just raise the minimum wage.
No, that ain't
that would
answering his question.
The incomes of a lot of folks. The other thing is we can close some of these tax loopholes out there that aren't really very productive
5 years
and use some of those unproductive tax breaks to help fund, for example, an expansion of the earned income tax credit, which is a wonderful tool that we've been able to use. Millions of people use it. In fact, about half of all parents at some point use the earned income tax credit so that they have more money in their pockets and keep more money out of their paychecks and are able to support their families more effectively. The problem right now is the earned income tax credit doesn't apply to folks who don't have kids. And there's some Republicans as well as Democrats who say this is a dumb idea. First of all, it's not giving incentives for a lot of single folks
to the corporations and earned income tax credit
the way it would if the EITC applied to them. And it's also particularly tough for young men who are just starting off in the workplace and oftentimes aren't making a lot of income. And they may have a child who they're not paying child support for, they're not with the mom because they don't feel like they're making enough money, or there might be disincentives for them to go ahead and get married. So you're seeing an interesting potential coalition of Democrats and Republicans who might be willing to expand it, but you'd have to pay for it. It would cost money. And one way of paying for it would be to close some of these corporate loopholes that are out there that aren't really helping anyone.
Have anybody heard this before?
Close those loopholes, could we not take those deductions that circumvent the cap in the 162M distribute those to the agencies that pay for the subsidies for these companies. What's left over, give back to the company, because nowhere in our Constitution of our founding forefathers are corporations given provision for greater or equal rights to living and breathing human citizens.
Well, unfortunately, the Supreme Court's been disagreeing with you on some things lately. That's the reason why the Citizens United opinion, for example, got applied. That a lot of court rulings lately have treated corporations as persons when it comes to various rights.
Right.
That takes us probably into a whole new set of conversations that I suspect Steve doesn't want me to wade into. But thank you, Curtis, for the great question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have one final hangout for you today on the East Coast where you are. Before we head over there, let's say goodbye to our friends in the middle of the country here.
See you guys.
Bye, President Obama.
Bye, everybody. Mr. President, we head over to the East Coast for our final hangout of the day. We're really pleased to be joined by 3 new participants here. First, we have Rob Page, who works in the solar energy industry in Portland, Maine. Reham Osman, a program assistant at a nonprofit in Washington, D.C. And finally, Rebecca Stewart, a proud mother of 2 in Covington, Kentucky. Rebecca, let's start with you.
Thanks. So my question regards Obamacare, which I think probably has a general consensus right now that the rollout perhaps was premature. I'm probably not the only one who's had really a panicked experience lately trying to figure out if my 10-year-old son can continue with his specialist or not. And I know that I cannot keep my plan, which I liked, but as I'm trying to decide what to do going forward, I've spent weeks with days on the phone getting confidently delivered wrong answers, conflicting information, and it's becoming quite obvious to me that a lot of agencies, almost everyone I've talked to, is having a lot of trouble figuring out the new rules. So I'm afraid that perhaps average Americans who haven't had the time or ability to do the legwork that I've been able to do are perhaps going to be blindsided by this. And I'm wondering, my question for you is, what are you doing to fix this or simplify what seems to be such a complicated process?
Well, Rebecca, first of all, it sounds like you were in the individual market, so you already had some sort of insurance plan, and so your concern is in terms of this transition, how does it affect you and your kids? And what I'll do first right away is make sure that somebody out of here, this White House, calls you directly, and I promise you, not only will they be confident, but it'll be the right answer.
No, that's personal favor.
But more generally,
do that for every American.
What we've been able to do, and you don't have to pussyfoot around, the rollout was a problem because the website wasn't working
quiet. You bribe them.
I will say that in all these big programs, whether it was the prescription drug plan,
it'll be all right
Medicare,
if he takes care of
every time this happens,
I know that.
There's a big country with a lot of complications and millions of people involved. There are going to be some glitches involved.
Glitches?
What we have done is, first of all, the website's working, healthcare.gov.
Who cares about the website? Dude, this is unconstitutional. You're forcing me to buy something.
Qualify for
the government
tax credit,
is forcing a private citizen to buy a product from a private company.
These exchanges is to
just
go to healthcare.gov where you do not have to wait anymore.
The completely constitutional
generally speaking, for the majority of people, certainly if you don't have health insurance, this will be a good deal for you.
If you're an illegal
If you already have health insurance, for the majority of folks like you who do, Rebecca, typically your prices will be lower or comparable, and you will have better health insurance because the insurance companies won't be able to drop you when when you need it most. There aren't going to be lifetime limits, so that suddenly you find yourself with a huge bill at the end. And you may
Again,
qualify
we're way
for
out
tax
in right
credits.
field here. This is just,
though,
how
after
can
you
you
look at
listen
that,
to this
it
without,
appears that
revolting?
you still are going to have a tough
This is
time.
crazy.
Or if you have a particular specialist and you haven't found that specialist in the network of the exchange that's offered in Kentucky, then we are looking at rules to make sure that somebody who's actively being treated, for example, can remain with their specialist for the duration of their treatment.
Anyone getting it?
That's what I'll try to provide more information about. For people who are generally watching, who have
you go
very
through the
specific
FBI,
questions
NSA,
like this, Rebecca,
every
we
kind
have
of
set
security
up
and everything
helplines.
because they got to make sure who
And
you are. This
what I
is
would
government
suggest
ID.
is that
And they will
everybody
force
who's
everybody
listening,
into the
if you have a
healthcare
particular
system,
question around this that is not
doorway
answerable over the internet through healthcare.gov,
everybody
call up one of the call centers.
Idea. I don't think they need to chip
in the
people
case of
anymore,
the
to
state
tell
of
you the
Kentucky,
truth.
they've
That's
got a
kind
pretty
of nutty because
good operation
they can
there.
track you anywhere you go.
Call up them and find out what exactly your problem is, and hopefully you'll get a good answer. But you, Rebecca, since you're talking to the president directly, will get, I guarantee you, a firm answer by the end of the day.
Yes, and I have called.
All right, Mr. President. We're going to go to Reham over in Washington, D.C., just given how much time we have left. Thanks, Rebecca. Reham, let's hear from you.
President Obama, surveillance is an issue that's really important for me, and I'm really glad that you mentioned it in your State of the Union address. In this speech that you gave a couple weeks ago, you stated that you are making certain reforms to NSA programs to ensure our privacy and our civil liberties. From the NYPD spying on Muslim communities to revelations of the NSA's surveillance program, a culture of distrust and suspicion has developed among Americans towards government and law enforcement. So what are you doing to regain the trust of the American people?
Hiring more cops.
Reham, even before the State of the Union, I gave a pretty comprehensive speech about the NSA.
Military tactics.
I'm pretty sure it can be found on Google, so pull it up, and because I won't be able to go into all the details.
You won't be able to lie that much
here that I did in that speech. But here's what it comes down to. First of all,
remember what you said.
The NSA and our entire intelligence community, by law, is prohibited from engaging in surveillance of U.S. persons or people in the United States, even if they're non-citizens,
so
without
they don't do it?
A court order. That's always been true. That continues to be true.
Wow.
The second thing
then they're lawbreakers and they should be arrested.
Really got concerned about was the collection of all these telephone calls that are made into one single database
here we go with
that
the telephone calls.
United States government was holding. It was only being accessed when you had evidence of reasonable suspicion.
This is a sidetrack.
You had a phone number associated with a terrorist network, and you wanted to find out who else was being called.
The switches down at the NSA. That's not
generally
changing.
That doesn't affect
Nobody's
the
changing their
overwhelming majority
jobs.
of the American
same people
but
are doing. What do you
folks,
think they're going to do? They're going to keep doing the same
if
thing.
all those numbers and all those phone calls are being held in one
this
place,
is just
isn't that potentially subject to abuse down the road? And I announced that we would reform that program so that the U.S. government wasn't holding this data while still being able to chase down leads when we have a potential terrorist attack. In the next 60 days, we are going
routine surveillance.
Get a report back
this
from
is routine
the
on
NSA
Muslim
and
communities.
the FBI
I know this to be
about
true
how
even in
we
a
do
small
that.
town. They'll get raided.
In the meantime, that database will not be able to be queried without
but they don't really speak out, so you do not hear about this.
Just like any other warrant.
Because
more broadly, though, we also have surveillance
an
outside this country.
It's like going to
and
double.
What I've done
then
in an
everybody else will be
unprecedented way is say we've got to protect the privacy rights not just to people here in the United States but everywhere. And if you're an ordinary person,
no, forget about everybody else but the United States. That's only our job. They don't need our help straightening out their own privacy issues.
We've set up
need to take
rules
care
to
of
do
ourselves.
that. But trying to find this right balance is difficult. And the one thing I will say, though,
trying to find a balance at all is unconstitutional.
As somebody who cares deeply about
and here we go with that cares
not only
deeply
our Constitution
stuff
and privacy rights, but is very proud of our tradition that all persons are treated equally under the law, including Muslim Americans. I've got to tell you that
since 9/11? Are you kidding me?
Uniformly, in every single interaction that I've had with law enforcement and the intelligence community, they are very mindful that any kind of discriminatory actions.
Well, here, Mr. President, look, I've been spying illegally.
We don't have a lot of patience for that.
Man.
Look, is it true that there are terrorist cells that are operating in Muslim countries? Absolutely. But what I think everybody in my administration at least understands is that our best defense against extremists is a strong Muslim community working with us and not being viewed with suspicion. And that's the attitude I think that pervades this administration and will continue to pervade this administration as long as I'm president.
Complete disaster.
Mr. President, we have time for
this guy is a complete
thanks, Reham. We have time for a quick final question from Rob in Portland. Rob?
Hello, Mr. President. This is about the coolest thing ever. I've been given a chance to ask you one question, and out of a million that I'd love to ask you over a beer, somewhere, when I thought about it, I kept coming back to this same article that I read a while ago about how presidents age extremely, just a lot faster than every other person in the world ages. They show pictures of people, the presidents before their term. And
every question in the world.
Even just 4-year terms, they end up looking 20 years
You're
old.
going to ask
you, my
him
friend, are looking
why he looks so old now.
I mean,
you can't lie like that, and you can't kill people, innocent people, all over the world. This man is a killer.
But you're expected to be superhuman when in reality you are nothing but human. And so my question is very simple. From one man to another, from a father to another, an American to another, just like you are, how are you? How is life treating you? How are you happy?
Oh, man.
Does
this matter to you? How about
we should have that beer, because I think it'd be this might take a longer answer, but
Obama would like.
I am pretty happy. I got to tell you.
Yeah. Why not? You haven't been prosecuted for Fast and Furious.
This amazing wife. And
you knew about that gun program. You guys set it up. And then when Brian Terry got killed, you acted like you didn't know anything about it. You lied about the whole thing and declared executive privilege over the documents that will prove that you and Holder were discussing this. You should be happy that the Republicans are spineless, and no one has went into court and got those documents out, or else you would be going to jail.
That family, and they're doing fine.
And you should be happy that drone striking Americans, I think it's 5 now, but the al-Awlakis come to mind. You killed Anwar al-Awlaki, and you just spit in the face of justice with no proof whatsoever. Refuse to show anybody any proof. The best you could say is, well, we're glad he's dead.
Extraordinary privilege, this job.
That's how it was. Well, here's a terrorist. He's been removed. He's dead. An American citizen has the right to go to trial no matter what. But here you didn't even want to really get specific with the charges. We still don't know. You killed him. 2 weeks later, you killed his 16-year-old son
for somebody
with a drone strike and 9 other people in an outdoor restaurant.
Making sure somebody has health care who didn't have it before.
16 years old. Then originally the government came out and says, well, he was 20 and he was a militant. That was not the case. You killed his son, 16 years old, citizen of the United States,
so the kids are
born
getting a
in
better
Colorado,
start.
I believe.
And
so
there's a big government. It's an ocean liner, so sometimes the changes you want don't happen as fast as you'd like.
What else? How about
sometimes
using our troops
the government will
to enforce a UN resolution in Libya and then just destroying the country?
Look there and say,
you funded Al-Qaeda over there.
We got to go in and fix it.
Gaddafi's forces were right outside Benghazi. They were ready to end the war. They had the so-called Al-Qaeda all rounded up right there. It would have been over in a month or two, and there would have been no more destruction. But then you said, well, we're going to authorize the U.S. military to enforce UN Resolution 1973. And then you went in there and you bombed all of his forces.
I'm just reminded
then you destroyed the army.
How many wonderful people there are in this country.
You completely destroyed the country. Then you had a public execution of a head of state.
Getting better. We are well positioned, better positioned than any country on earth to make this 21st century an American century.
Shaking his hand and everything.
For me to be a part of that, that's a pretty good deal.
And then Hillary Clinton goes over there and
still thinks I'm pretty cute, even with the gray hair. I just want you to know.
I mean, what does that tell you about what's going on?
You definitely are.
All right, man.
Thanks very much, man.
Thank you, Rob.
I think that's all. I think that's all the time we have today, Mr. President. Thanks a lot for joining us on behalf of all of us here at Google and YouTube, and of course everybody who joined us today. This has been a lot of fun. We'd love to do it again with you real soon. Take care.
Steve, I had a great time. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Mr. President. Thank you.
See you guys.
Liar. See you guys. Yeah, that ain't the America I know right there. This is just pure fantasy land. You guys want to live in a world like that? Holy mackerel. It was unbelievable. All right. I would urge you to watch February 2nd on my channel. The Spirit 202.